let's just talk about the Build Back Better bill. The biggest expenditure, as far as I can tell, or one of the biggest expenditures in the bill, is not universal pre-K. It is not childcare. It's not the tax credit. It is the expansion of the limit on what you can deduct from your taxes in the state and local taxes. This was the only decent thing, as far as I could tell, in terms of like the Trump tax bill, was to basically say, like, there was some talk that this is going to put pressure on some states, California, New York, New Jersey, to raise their taxes or to drop their taxes and cut services. But I don't think that's borne out, frankly. And it turns out that super wealthy people can afford to pay their taxes and don't want to move to some other state because they have to pay taxes. Give me your sense of like how relevant that is within the context of the bill. And, is it, I get a sense of what it tells us about what's wrong with our politics, but just your sense on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly there to get the votes of a handful of conservative Democrats, especially conservative Democrats in New Jersey and the states where this is most relevant, to get their votes and get them to sign on. It's also clear that in the Senate, which now that this bill is passed, it's going to go to the Senate, and the Senate is going to have its hands on it, that powerful Senate Democrats like Bernie Sanders are very unhappy with the expansion of the SALT deduction. So my sense is that this may end up being a real area of contention. And I would hope, my personal preference here is for that deduction, if not to be removed entirely, which is probably not going to happen for these political reasons, but at least sort of like scale down quite a bit before it goes back to the House, before it goes for the final conference vote on in both chambers. That would be my preference. But it does speak to, I think, one of the challenges Democrats have, which is their coalition now includes a whole bunch of affluent suburbanites. And this is the kind of thing that affluent suburbanites, it's the kind of thing that they like, even if it is sort of, I think, antithetical to a big tax cut for rich people who own like multiple homes, right? Like is antithetical to what the Democratic Party is supposed to stand for. But the fact that it includes, the party coalition now includes all of these affluent suburbanites and their representatives, kind of makes it a challenge, makes it a struggle. We'll see if those conservative Democrats are basically willing to compromise on their tax cuts to get a big spending priority for the president through. Does
Joe Manchin care about it? I guess like this is like, it seems to me, I find it just grotesque, frankly, that, it just seems so like miserly and greedy. It really just does. And that Gottheimer just has, I don't know, 20 or 30 donors in his district who are at whatever you reverse engineer, whatever, it takes for them to be paying $80,000 in state and local taxes. You reverse engineer it, whatever they're making annually. I don't know, $600,000-$700,000 a year. Who knows what it is? It just seems. But in the long and short of it, I'd like to see us, go back and institute the billionaires tax and do a wealth tax and just across the board tax raises. I don't care about the specific deduction in and of itself. If the package was bigger, it seems to me, would be a fair trade. But does Joe Manchin care about that? That seems to be the problem. Like if this was a sop to Joe Manchin and he was going to sign on to at least the 1.75, which again, a big, significant chunk of that 1.75 is just tax deduction, tax break for very targeted wealthy people. It seems to me that it would be okay, at least in terms of like, we're going to have to come back and raise taxes on people at one point anyways, just to keep them from having that much money.
Yeah, I don't know if Joe Manchin cares about this particular tax cut, right? He does care about the attempted wealth taxes and billionaire taxes, I think, for similarly sort of like venal reasons, his connection to Canada donor class. But But as far as like West Virginians go, right? So the most relevant part of the 2017 tax bill, the Trump tax bill, was to double the standard deduction. And so for most of his constituents, that's the benefit. And there's not really anyone, the number of West Virginians who benefit from who would benefit from this change in the deduction, in the SALT deduction, has to be vanishingly small. Like it can't really matter that much because West Virginia is itself a low tax, low service state. So I don't know if he necessarily cares about this. If he does have like a top line number that he's not going to go over, let's say he's just not going to go over 1.75 trillion or 1.5 trillion, reducing the SALT deduction would be the kind of thing that could like get you past that number without really taking an axe at any of the programs within the bill. But I feel like that's the big unanswered question as this goes towards the Senate, is like, what exactly do Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, what do they want and what don't they want? It's unclear to me. The House seems to have produced a package that by itself, I think maybe could get past those two, but it's, for my part, totally unclear to me what they would prefer to see or what they would like to nix from the package as it exists.
It feels to me like Sinema she's gotten everything she didn't want out of the bill in terms of like, cheaper prescription drugs across the board. And that Manchin just doesn't want the bill. But it also feels like he's sort of run out of, fake excuses. With all those analysts coming out the other day and saying this is not going to add to inflation. Who does he pretend to listen to? Is it Larry Summers going to come around and say like, well, I'm personally explaining to Joe Manchin that he shouldn't. What does Joe Manchin say at this point? It feels like he's run out of, maybe he can come up with another one. Like, I don't want any bills that have 3 B's in them. Like, we got to stop, get away from these things that are so alliterative. Or what does he say?
I don't know. It's Manchin has been all over the place in a lot of ways, right? Like first he said, or last month he said, I don't think we should work on a reconciliation bill this year. But just, I think a couple of days ago, he said, oh, we can work on a reconciliation bill this year. I think my read on Manchin so far is that there are substantive things he does not want to see, right? He wanted this bill to be much smaller than the original proposal. He is skeptical of things like paid leave, of kind of like unqualified benefits to ordinary people. But once you get past that stuff, once you've either been persuaded or you've made concessions, my sense is that he doesn't want to actually tank Biden's presidency. I don't think he necessarily has an interest in trying to, make Biden's presidency the best thing it could be. But I don't think he wants to see Biden, crash and burn, because that if he decides to run for re-election, that will harm his chances as well. And so at this point, I'm sure he'll make additional cuts. I'm sure Sinema will. But I kind of think they're both going to end up being votes for this package, especially, you're seeing today how much positive press the House Democrats have gotten, the Democrats have gotten for passing the Build Back Better bill in the House. And I think that's going to influence their tactical decision of whether they're going to support a final package. I think that if it's late December, it's right before Christmas, and Democrats have passed, they passed a $1.8 trillion relief bill. They passed $1 trillion infrastructure bill, and they passed a $1.5 trillion kind of social policy bill. That's a good record to have for a first year in office. And I think even Manchin and Sinema are going to want to be able to run on and tout that record going into next year and beyond.
Or to drop their taxes and cut services. But I don't think that's borne out, frankly. And